record.
All right, cool. All right, Lindsay, how are you doing today?
Pretty good. How about you?
Doing all right. Uh, First, I'd just like to say it is such an honor to get to meet you and do this interview. I've been watching you since I was a freshman in high school, and
Oh
I
goodness.
just graduated.
Just
Uh,
graduated college?
yes.
Oh, nice. Congrats. Did you graduate like during COVID? one of the one of
Yeah,
the COVID.
graduated.
This sucks, but at least you did it. It's done.
Yes, and congratulations to you on Axiom's End. I finished it yesterday. It was a lovely read.
Thank you.
Of course. And first, I'd like to ask, because a lot of the characters had a lot of depth to them, they were very inspired. I'd just like to know what stories, what characters, what things inspired those in Axiom's End.
I guess I don't really know for the two mains. Like people keep asking that, but I was just like, I think with protagonists, you're kind of lying if you say that they don't represent some aspect of yourself. But like there are other, characters that are, either tropes that felt appropriate or tropes that I just, kind of enjoy. Like, Saul, the government jerk who, is kind of a secret softie. Like that's just a trope I enjoy. That's like my favorite part of Hellboy. And also, I guess it's pretty obvious, but Nils Ortega is based on Julian Assange, not Glenn Greenwald. Yeah, but I don't know, for the most part it's just sort of like I come up with a concept, and like sometimes I'll like name them after a person I know. Like Sev is named after a guy I went to film school with who's now a pretty successful producer. But the character himself is not based on this guy at all. He's like an old Armenian dude. Like
Right.
I mean, I guess they are both Armenian, but like, other than that, not really.
Right. Now, how has your background in film influenced the writing of this book?
I think more than any, I guess there's like twofold. Like part of it is structural, and the other part is like influence, because it is pretty nakedly more influenced by movies than it is by like other books, at least in my opinion. And But other than that, it's like part of what I studied at USC was screenwriting, and so I feel like the screenwriting aspect, like in terms of structure, has been really informative for how I like construct things. I've talked about this on my channel a few times about how, like, 3-act structure and screenplay structure and wants versus need, like it's a very utilitarian approach to screenwriting and story construction, but like that's that's just kind of how I roll. So that has definitely been part of it.
As somebody who is more likely to watch a film than read a book, I have to say that approach helped me a lot to follow through. And I'd like to know if you have any plans to make a movie adaptation of Axiom's End, and if so, what role in its production would you like to take?
Well, no, I don't really get to make those decisions. It doesn't really work like that.
Right, but if you were to, if this was like up to you, what role would you, in an ideal world, like to take?
I don't know. It's kind of something I try not to think about because it's like, yeah, realistically, it's just not going to happen. So it's just not really something I have the brain space for.
Yeah, fair enough. But hope.
But honestly, it's just not really
Hope.
something I told them. Like I had to be in the writer's room and I had to get a producer credit, but that was it. But it's also, kind of, just pretty irrelevant. Like the option might sell, but the odds of it getting made are like, 1% of 1% of 1%. So it's like, eh.
All right. And I'd like to know, how has your life as Lindsay Ellis, the published author, changed versus Lindsay Ellis, the video producer?
Um, Not very much. I'm sure part of that has to do with COVID because like usually when you debut, you go to all these like events and meet your new colleagues and stuff like that. And I didn't get to do that. So I can't say that it has changed very much at all. You know, it's kind of like when you hit the times list, you're like, oh wow, life is going to change tomorrow, and then it doesn't. Nobody cares. So I cannot say it has changed much at all.
Yeah, you really did get screwed on that.
Yeah.
I remember the book tour announcement. I was disappointed. I would have loved to have gone to one of the events, but
Where are you based?
I'm in New York.
Oh yeah, yes, because we were gonna do the Strand. Although that one was probably gonna be a shit show because the Strand is so small, and they were like, "This is fine," you know. But you know, doesn't really matter because
Which,
didn't happen anyway.
oh, sorry.
I mean, like it doesn't really matter because it was canceled anyway.
Yeah, I suppose so. Now, you've been a fan and critic of Disney for as long as you've been online, pretty much. What changes would you want to see them make?
I don't know. I am honestly just sick of them. I'm just sick of it. Like after I made that woke Disney video last year, I was like, I'm just not. I don't think I can do Disney content anymore. Like also kind of like almost from an ethical standpoint. Like after the Fox merger, I was honestly kind of like, this is just unforgivable. It just any kind of like even theoretical interest I had in Disney stuff, it just kind of killed it because I'm like, this is just a hydra. This is a monster. This is making the world worse. And also, I think by and large their movies just are getting less and less interesting. Like they're not even interestingly bad anymore. They just like play it so safe with, you know, because at least Marvel some of the time will take some risks, but like you look at the last Star Wars movie, which is like the most cowardly, like we're gonna try to please everybody, and then in doing so please nobody, you know, like it was yeah, I've honestly been kind of avoiding it. Although I've been like, I watched Hamilton on Disney Plus no less than like 12 times. It's like, yeah, so like on Disney Plus, I've watched Hamilton like 12 times and half of The Sound of Music once. So I just haven't watched any Disney content during the like 2 months that I've had a Disney Plus subscription.
Wow, I didn't know they had Sound of Music.
They bought Fox.
Oh, yeah, I kind of agree. They need to just stop.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, it's a complicated issue, and like, you know, you get to like copyright law and like you know, it's like only in Trump's America could this happen. But like, yeah, it's just something that I'm like, I don't. It's also just such a kind of a toxic culture to work around on the internet now, like especially Star Wars, and
Oh,
it's just like
God.
it's just not really worth it to like have anything to say because it's just gonna invite like weird bad blood and feelings and stuff, and I'm just like, ah.
I agree with that. Leave it to Red Letter Media to cover Star Wars and Star Trek.
Yeah, they don't care. They're just like, whatever, come and get me.
Yeah, uh, half in the bag indeed. Now, you've reviewed a lot of movies over the years and just ideas in general in film. Have there ever been any films or any works of media, any shows, musicals, anything that you once reviewed or just held a strong opinion about that you then changed your mind
um let's see. I guess I was very pro Cloud Atlas when it came out. In a, you know, because like there was a lot of kind of bad faith criticism around it, but there was also some like pretty valid criticism in the way that it handled race. And you know, it being like 2012 2013, I was just like, well, whatever, I'm gonna ignore that. And you know, yellow face is not the same as blackface. And you know, so that's one that I feel like I've kind of had to walk back because, you know, at the time I was just like, you know, conflating all criticism of that movie. And now I'm kind of realized like, no, I was wrong. Like they had a point and I was just ignoring it because I was being defensive because it was kind of a weird movie that like, you know, yeah, it's kind of a complicated thing, but I guess that's like the first thing that comes to mind.
Cloud Atlas was an odd one indeed. Haven't seen that since around the time it came out, so.
Yeah, I rewatched it pretty recently, and it's honestly pretty uncomfortable to watch. You know, where you have like Hugo Weaving with like, you know, slanty eye makeup, and it's just like, oh boy, this is
I don't
bad
remember
look.
that.
Oh yeah, it's like that was sort of the controversies. You have all these white actors in yellow face. You know, they're like um wearing like prosthetics that give them Asian eyes, and it's just like at the time it's just like, well, it's just kind of, you know, it's this commentary on trans issues, and now it's like, no, that doesn't work. Can't do that.
They pulled that card too early
Mhm.
and in the wrong way. Uh, Now, you've talked about music a bit over the years, from time to time. What is your personal taste in music?
I don't. I don't really have any. Yeah, I just kind of do what Spotify recommends. I've kind of like that's just like another thing that I'm just like I don't really think much about. I guess I make themed playlists a lot, and I listen to a lot of like soundtrack music to write. But I guess lately I've been listening to a lot of stuff from the 2000s for like inspiration.
Mm,
Um, and some I have like right in front of me I have like a playlist of cheesy 80s music. um
ooh.
but yeah, I don't really know. I don't really have any taste.
Well, can you rattle off some names? Like, who are some people on your lists that you can think of?
Well, I got Michael Bolton, REO Speedwagon. um I used to listen to a lot of Tori Amos, but not anymore. um yeah, I don't really have anything.
And for, I know you had your video on how to get a book deal in 10 years or less. What advice or one piece of advice would you want to give to people starting out that you want to leave people with?
Honestly, it's just that you have to be patient. I think that's like the biggest mistake first time authors make is, you know, thinking that they're going to get it right out of the gate, because sometimes people do. And sometimes people do, but like for the most part, it's you don't get it on your first try, especially like if you've never even done like a practice novel behind the scenes before. Um, and so I think it's just like whenever you finish something, you kind of have it, excuse me, kind of have it in your head that like this is it, I've done it, and now, next up Broadway. And it's generally it's kind of difficult to have realistic expectations, but I think when you're first starting out, you're always nowhere near as ready as you think you are. And I think it's really hard to get that set of expectations, because like having realistic expectations can also be really demoralizing. So I think like learning to walk that balance, and like balancing realistic expectations with also staying motivated, is kind of the hardest thing you can learn, but also kind of the most important. And also finding your strength is really hard, I think, because a lot of people they want to be someone else. I see this with video creators all the time, where it's just like they, not necessarily me, but they'll like see someone that they admire, like let's say Red Letter Media, for instance, and they will you know try to emulate their style, even though they would probably be better suited to somebody else's style, or creating their own style. So like in emulating them, they kind of create like a shittier version of both, rather than figuring out what their own voice is. And I think that's another difficult, like a really hard thing to do, is figure out what your voice is and how to distinguish it from like the people you admire, and not just being a copycat of somebody who's already doing whatever you're trying to do, but better.
Hey, that's some great advice. I have a friend who's trying to write a book, and I mean, he thinks he's going to get a deal in, just next year. And, he's talented, but
Well, yeah, it's sort of like it's also a question of like, who do you know? Do you already have a platform? Uh, are you representing a marginalized group of some sort? Like, then you probably have a better shot. If you're just like another white guy, then you're you have an uphill battle. I'm not gonna lie.
Uh, well, I'll have to definitely pass that news on to him because no one
It
knows.
is what it is. I mean, it's just, yeah, because I think right now publishing is like, I'm not there. Some of them are overcorrecting, like especially like in genre fiction. It depends on what genre we're writing in, but like in science fiction and fantasy in particular, there's a lot of interest in like trying to expand beyond the like Joe Haldeman slash Tolkien rubric and trying to find new things. So it's like not a great time to be conventional,
Mhm.
if I'm being honest. So that's because it really depends on what genre you're writing. Like if you're in romance, you probably want to stay conventional. If you're in like mystery, you probably want to stay conventional. But if you're in science fiction and fantasy, now is a good time to be experimental.
Mm.
Is the way the trend is going.
Hey, as the saying goes, to boldly go where no man has gone before. Uh, Now I'd like to know about the Pequod race. How did that come to be? How did you come up with those designs?
Mm. Well, part of it is aesthetic because at the end of the day, it's like you are, it is a form of shorthand. You are communicating something with the design of creatures. So like effectively, I wanted something that was like kind of like both beautiful and horrifying to look at, like kind of in the way that like a tiger is or a crocodile is, because I think there's this like human fascination with like looking at things that are kind of scary, like it's almost kind of thrilling. And also like I'm afraid of spiders, like I was terrible, especially black widow spiders, which is because like just last night, uh like we have this wood pile behind the house, and my husband like a few weeks ago threw some of it into the trash can, and he just kind of offhandedly mentions like, so there's a bunch of black widows in the trash. And like ever since then,
Oh,
like I haven't seen any, but like just like him saying that, like I'm afraid to take the trash out, like I'm afraid to touch the trash can. But I also am kind of like obsessed with looking at spiders. Like we have um God, I think we have like a dozen tarantulas. And
good lord.
yeah, so I kind of like there's like certain animal species that I like to like that I find really scary, but also like to look at. So that was one aspect of it, is something that is like fundamentally frightening to look at, but also you kind of want to look at it. But also it is kind of based in like some books I've read, like in terms of you know parallel evolution. There's this book called The Vital Question by a guy named Nick Lane, which it's like one of those things where it's kind of hard to disprove or prove this guy's theory, because it's like he talks a lot about like how life originated on Earth and what we can extrapolate to potential life uh, arising on other planets. And basically his theory was like, there's only so many ways proteins can coagulate, and we can probably guess that like, yes, complex life is probably eukaryotic, it probably has a bimodal sex system, it probably has like and if you get to like intelligent life, they're probably like bimodal, like half and half the way we are. They're probably bipedal because they need hands. They probably have two eyes because depth perception versus like the energy expenditure of having eyes in the first place. Basically it's just like there are some, this idea that there's probably a lot of overlap if intelligent life were to arise. So that was why I allowed myself to like, because it kind of more on the human end whenever you kind of get down to it. It's like, well, they're bipedal, they've got hands, they've got eyes, right off the bat, those are kind of like the most human like characteristics. So sort of like a balancing act between something really alien and something that's still somewhat familiar.
Right, I got a lot of insect vibes, especially because of how often the parallel between spiders, like Ampersand's hand curling up like a spider, and
Mm-hmm.
also the eyes that were like the oval shape. Yeah, I noted that quite a bit throughout reading. And the last question I'd like to leave you with is what would you like people to take away from reading Axiom's End? Is there anything you'd like people to be left with?
Well, I guess I kind of I hope it finds an audience outside of my audience, because I don't love people being like, oh well, she said this in a video, so this is probably what she means. I kind of wish that the text should speak for itself, but like, I guess on a personal note, like I think that does make people read into it things that weren't intended. Like, oh, this is your politics, therefore this is like the political statement you're trying to make, and like definitely not trying to make a political statement when we, especially like in the micro politics of in the context of like the U.S. government. I want it to be more like an open-ended question, like an exploration of like, where, especially like with regard to like secrecy and transparency, it's like, where should the line be drawn? Is Nils right? Who is, who is the correct party here? And like, in my opinion, like there isn't really one. It's like, it's not an easy question to answer. And I think people who are really hard line are a little bit naive about that. So yeah, I guess basically it's like to approach it like not like it's making a statement, but more that it's asking a question, because I think like the best fiction isn't dogmatic, it isn't preachy, it's exploring a theme, and so that is my intent.
Hey, I think that came across quite well. I really liked how Nils was like, you're right, it wasn't as easy as, was he a good guy, was he a bad guy? I like that he was like this total narcissist, and we really get to see how he
Yeah,
feels about his family.
because that does tend to be how it shakes out, like in the real world. Like it is interesting. I think Edward Snowden is like the only one who hasn't lost his goddamn mind so far. But you like look at people like Glenn Greenwald, who's just like, he was like really suspected, and now he's just like this Twitter jackass who's like spends half of his time being really defensive about having a young husband. And it's like, you probably want to put like, you need to stop posting, like you need to stop tweeting. Like it is just like a weird thing that happens whenever you have somebody that starts with scruples, and then like they get caught up in this stuff, and maybe they get caught up in it for reasons that are more about their own ego than the actual issue that they're championing. And it's kind of hard, it can be kind of hard to see like where the line gets drawn.
Totally. I think that came across pretty well, and we get to know Nils for ourselves with like his letters and stuff. That's one thing I enjoyed. Well, that wraps up the interview.
He'll be back.
Oh
yeah, because the sequel's coming out next fall.
Oh, we got a sequel coming, and what will that be called? Do you have a title yet?
Yes, it's called Truth of the Divine, and it's out in October.
Lovely.
It takes place in 2008. That's the spoiler, as opposed to 2007.
Lindsay, I think you gave away too much.
Yeah. Well, I have seen some people speculate, like, man, I hope it's in the far future. Like, no. Still got more Bush nostalgia to get through. Like, that was the year, apple bottom jeans came out.
Boots with the fur.
That was when Flow Rida got big. We got to spend some time in 2008.
When Tom Cruise attempted comedy and actually did okay at it.
Oh yeah. That was another video that I keep like starting and not finishing, is about Tropic Thunder. And like pastiche, but like it seems like kind of a sensitive issue right now, so maybe we want to put a pin in that.
Yeah, maybe. Lindsay, it was an honor getting to talk to you. One thing I would like to say before we're off is I can definitely understand your feelings on your earlier work, as you've expressed before. But one thing I would like to say about it is, at a time, they were a source of comfort for me in a not so great time in my life. So you still have people who get a lot of joy out of them.
It's funny because I was just revisiting some of my colleagues that I haven't thought about in a few years, like and thinking like, maybe I should talk about this. Because it's interesting to see how people like look back on it, like they're being nostalgia for like nostalgia critic now. But yeah, I
Yeah,
guess that's good. Thank you.
of course. I mean, yeah, I was a fan of his back in the day. Personally, haven't watched him in about a year or two. Uh, he hasn't evolved, and the one reason I've kept up with you and some others like Todd in the Shadows and James Rolfe is because you guys have evolved in your content and have, I mean, you do things your own way. You're not stuck in one box
Mhm.
like I feel like some others can be. But thank you so much for your time. Is there anything else you'd like to leave with the people?
Nope. Thank you for having me, and